Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says he's no longer allowed to vote. This is just, I don't know why I find this story so damn funny, but I find it hilarious. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and he is somehow the first privileged, extremely wealthy cabinet secretary who I guess can't figure out where he lives. It's sort of like Tom Hanks in that movie Terminal, where he's like stuck in an airport terminal and his country stops existing and he no longer is a citizen of any country. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can't figure out where he lives, so he is not allowed to vote. He has been disenfranchised. Why do I find this so funny? Here he is saying a judge declared he has no legal residence, so he can't vote anywhere. Take a look at this.
Secretary Kennedy, homelessness continues to be the number one issue in the city of Los Angeles. We have a mayoral election. Just curious if you're still registered to vote in the city of Los Angeles, if you followed this debate between the incumbent mayor and a DSA candidate, Nithya Raman, and if you plan on voting, and just tell us your thoughts about this election.
I'm in a very strange position because when I ran for president, the Democratic Party sued me first to get me off the ballot in 12 states, including New York and California. And then when I endorsed President Trump, they sued me to keep me on the ballot in those same states. And in the course of one of those lawsuits, it was declared that I had no legal residence. And so I'm in a dilemma where I literally have no state where I can legally vote right now. I'm probably the only person in the country who's a legal citizen who has that dilemma, but I'm still trying to figure it out before the next election.
Okay, so he says that a judge determined he has no legal residence, which means he can't legally vote anywhere, and he believes he may be the only American who is trapped in this very strange predicament. It sort of sounds like RFK Jr.'s rights have been taken away, except of course that is not what has happened here. This goes back to Kennedy's independent presidential campaign in 2024. And so it's all self-inflicted. He wanted to appear on the New York ballot, and he identified a house in Katona as his legal residence. The problem was he didn't really live there. The house belonged to a friend, and Kennedy said, well, I was renting a bedroom for $500 a month. That means I can legally say that that's my residence, but there was no lease, and his wife didn't live there, and his family didn't live there, and his pets and his possessions were not there. So all the evidence was he stayed there one time while actually living with his wife in California. So a New York judge said the Katona property cannot be counted as a legitimate residence. And it's both highly improbable, if not preposterous, that that's where he lives. Nobody believes this, is what the judge was ultimately saying. The judge didn't declare that he was legally forbidden from residing anywhere in the United States, as he now claims. The court answered a very narrow question. Was the address that he put on his New York nominating papers his actual residence? And the answer was no, it was not. He used a sham address to maintain that voter registration for his political interests. This is not the government stole RFK Jr.'s vote. This is RFK Jr. submitted an address where he didn't really live, and you're not allowed to do that. Fine. That then gets to an even more absurd situation, which is that Kennedy revealed his supposed homelessness while appearing with the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development at an event about actual homelessness in Los Angeles. RFK, I believe, has roughly a net worth of $20 to $25 million. And there's something very rich about going, I am homeless from the purposes of voting, when you're at an event about actual homeless people. And what took place was that you had two cabinet officials talking about people who genuinely lack shelter, genuinely are homeless. And RFK, Kennedy family member, multimillionaire, he is going, well, I'm kind of homeless too, because I don't have a voter registration that I can submit successfully. it is, if you want to take it seriously for a second, it's sort of an impossible legal dilemma, but the solution is really straightforward. Establish residency where you really live and register there. Pick the house, fill out the form, problem solved. Now, he, I guess, wants to argue because he's in DC and he's here and he's there. He doesn't really live anywhere. People with nothing manage to find a way to have a legal residence, and sometimes they don't, and this creates problems for applying to jobs and this sort of thing. That is not RFK Jr.'s situation. Now, what is the real hypocrisy here? I know you all know it. This is an administration that's constantly demanding stricter voting rules, and we've got to, in a much more strict way, document and have aggressive enforcement against people who are using improper addresses. And now Trump's own Secretary of Health and Human Services was caught using a sham address, and he says he's unable to vote. Interestingly, it seems the systems we have are working pretty damn well. Now, as a kind of like 30,000 foot reminder, RFK has not lost his citizenship. No judge has said his voting rights are revoked. He created a mess by lying about where he lived, and he wants to blame it on other people. And he is now a part of this movement that says personal responsibility above all else, blah, 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 blah. And he is not taking responsibility and going, I shouldn't have selected that sham address. That's really the problem. The guy that Trump placed in charge of American health can't figure out where he lives in order to simply become registered to vote. This is what we are dealing with. This is where we are operating. And meanwhile, of course, what he's actually doing in his role as Secretary of Health and Human Services is completely deplorable. I mean, you're supposed to be increasing the health of the country, and you're doing the opposite. Final thing, before I forget, and a lot of this stuff is coming to me as I talk about it. There have been some voices on the left recently, including Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who are saying, you know, a lot of the underlying instincts about RFK's health ideas aren't wrong, but the execution is a problem. And AOC and others are getting absolutely crushed. I've spoken to nutritionists and doctors on this show. They agree with that. We just have to be careful about what we mean. In general, should we be going in a direction of exercise, time outside, less processed food? Of course we should be doing all that. Is there a lot of lifestyle stuff that is highly correlated with negative health outcomes among Americans? Of course that's true. RFK is completely right about that. Where it goes off the rails is the anti-vax stuff, or saying seed oils are bad, but you got to be eating beef tallow, which, by the way, all the evidence is seed oils are good, and the beef tallow is what is bad for heart health. We're going to solve problems by, for example, getting rid of food dyes in Skittles, when it's like, how much food? You have an entire bag of Skittles. What is it, a gram of these food dyes? That is where it goes off the rails. And it's wrapped up with this like Tylenol can cause autism stuff and all of this wacky stuff. That's the problem. The instinct that lifestyle is a factor and nutrition is a factor, 100%, the execution is where the problem lies. Appreciate you watching. Stick around for this next video, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you actually see our uploads. You can also catch the full podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.